It's the Brad and John Show.
It is the Brad and John Show. Today's date is January 22nd, and this is B Block, which means we start at about 7:20. For those of you listening to the future on the bjshow.co podcast or the bjshow.video videocast. John, a flag has been thrown on the field by what I said the last break. Did you read that as well, too?
I did, yeah. We had a listener that says, I don't know if they want us to name them or not, but they said the question is, what percentage of people would be, the idea is, if you offered residents of St. Charles County a tax cut on their, let's say, their property, what percentage of people are actually property owners in St. Charles County?
This particular person who shall remain nameless says 30%. That's got to be low.
That was my set. That was what I said, Brett.
That was what you said. 30%. That's super low, John. In St. Charles, in the St. Louis City, I might say that would be the correct answer. But there's so many single properties in St. Charles County. There's, now there's a whole new bunch of apartment buildings springing up all over the place. But I would say that probably 50 to 60% of the property is in St. Charles County.
You might be right. I mean, that's a rough. You know these numbers. You know how to approximate this way better than I do, Brad. But I would just think if you would combine apartment owners with adults who, either share a home with someone. I don't know. To me, it's hard to think that 60% of voters in St. Charles County own their own home.
Well, for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, and if you're listening to this in the future, if you just tuned in, last break I said that if Mike Elam was elected as county executive, and this is just hypothetical. If Mike heard this, he'd probably go, "Oh, I can't believe Brad's saying that about me." But the idea being is, if Mike got elected and he said, "Okay, we've got some pushback on the property taxes in St. Charles County. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to put this on the ballot, and we're going to essentially sell off all the county parks. And if we sell off all the county parks and sell them to developers for real estate, we're going to have this windfall of cash, and we're going to cut the property taxes in half." What percentage of the people would vote for that? I said 90%. I said 90% would say. Now, the person who shall remain nameless said personal property tax. Now, you know what? Bill Eigel would be the guy to talk to about that, because
I know, and it's a good thing that we're not going to call him today, because I bet he would have an opinion on that. Hey, Brad, you know what? Just don't be a mouth breather.
Okay, explain that. Is that supposedly? It's because, see, here's the problem that I have. Okay, I am a mouth breather because first off, my middle son broke my nose years ago, and when it healed back together, what do you call it? A deviated septum or something like that?
Yeah, you had a deviated septum, and I think most folks know that you were a key part of the 1985 Pittsburgh drug trials. You were a close confidant of both Lonnie Smith and Keith Hernandez, and in fact, Whitey Herzog wanted to trade you to a New York radio station because you had such serious drug problems. He didn't want you around, but you ended up turning your life around, Brad. Yes, so you might be a literal mouth breather.
Okay, so why is that? You've used that
it's an insult. Yeah, it's obviously an insult.
Why is that?
Well, can I tell you?
Yeah.
So picture someone hunched over their phone or their laptop, leaning forward with a double chin, and instead of breathing in through the nose, out through the mouth, like a normal human being, they go, "Actually, John, you forgot the P-51 Mustang." It's someone who will go to the lowest level of conversation and engage in base behavior because they have a significant overbite and they breathe through their mouth. And they're also the type that, like, they're the guy you sit next to on a plane that clears the phlegm from his nose. This is so gross. And then swallows. You know how, like, men your generation do that a lot? Like, that's the type of nasally activity that you just want to keep at arm's length.
I thought that was the Hawk Tuah girl. I thought that's what she did.
No, she's a crypto scammer, allegedly.
No.
And she's disappeared. I'm sure you've seen that.
She's
nowhere to be found now.
Fallen off the face of the earth after she made, what, $10 million or something like that? Okay.
Yeah.
No, but go back to this again. Okay. If you see an athlete running down, let's see, like last night.
You're being exceptions guy, Brad. So go ahead. Yep, you're going to name the exception of somebody that's got a nose strip. And yes, Brad, I was comparing Brad Hildebrand to an elite athlete. Go ahead with your incorrect analogy.
Which is as far as the comparison you get. I don't, when I've heard that before, "Oh, he's a mouth breather." Okay, well,
Brad, you're sounding like a neckbeard. That's all I have to say. You're sounding like a neckbeard.
John's always complimentary of me. Okay, so we will move on from that. John says an insult. So all you people out there that breathe through your mouth, John doesn't approve of you. He thinks that
Well,
you're
I don't say I wouldn't approve of you. I would just say, please don't reproduce. Please don't have kids.
don't reproduce. Okay, the Trump thing. What we want to talk about that for a minute. The DEI thing. Have you read this story about what he's doing with DEI? Have you heard
Unbelievable.
this?
And I heard it at the top of the hour on the Fox News update, Brad.
My
Yes.
God.
This is like a dream come true.
And essentially, if you don't know what he's talking about, today, like by 6 o'clock, all the DEI initiative programs in the federal government have to be gone. And the people are all going to be put on what? On hiatus? They're going to be put on standby or something like that?
I think we're putting them on standby. I think it's kind of TBD. I mean, I could see him saying, we're getting way ahead of ourselves, but I could see him saying, okay, those people have to actually move into jobs that create some sort of value, or they need to be let go.
Well, the crazy thing about that isn't that common sense? If you're running a business and you've got 100 people there and you realize that 20 of them aren't really doing much, don't you get rid of those 20 people?
No, I don't think so, Brad. And I think that this is the idea of progressive business people. If you were really masochistic, and I know you are, and you spent a day reading corporate LinkedIn posts from progressive business people, Brad, they would tell you that the point of a business at a certain point is not to make money, is not to pay their bills, is not to pay their Spire/electric bill, that the point of a business is to help bring about social change. And what can you do using the levers of capitalism to inspire social change? So, Brad, there are people that truly believe that at Boeing, let's say, 80% of your jobs can be business related, but 20% of those jobs need to be focused on helping the communities. You want to be additive to the communities that you're in, Brad. When you're building something in a community, you don't just want to employ people. You need to build up the community. And you have a duty to the people in the community to hire people of color, Brad, to hire people who've been historically disadvantaged, and in fact, take some of your profits and invest it back in that community, Brad. That's the point of a business. It's not to make money. It's not to keep a balance sheet in the black. It's to do good, Brad. I don't know. Clearly, you need to spend more time on LinkedIn.
I guess so, John. I mean, I love it when you get into your corporate speak. Okay, you'll love this. Okay, I read this interview. It's pretty interesting. There's this woman. She's a former FBI agent, and her name is Nicole Parker. And she worked in the private sector before she went into the FBI. And she's telling all these stories about what's going on behind the scenes in the FBI. And here's a quote from her. This was an article I read. I read it in two different places. Once again, her name's Nicole Parker, a former FBI special agent. Quote, I came from the private sector before the FBI, and I noticed such a contrast. The private sector, if you're not doing your job, of course you're going to get fired. But when you come to the federal government, there was almost this mood of, we're untouchable. Is that?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, isn't that the whole point of joining the federal government, so that you can be a civil service worker and not have any accountability?
Well, but see, then they put another layer of isolation in there when they join a union and they're in the federal government. It's like, okay, so does anybody ever get fired from the federal government, especially if they're a union member? See, this is the whole crazy thing. To me, it's meritocracy. It's just like I had that story last week with the football coach or the basketball coach from Tennessee got mad at one of their star players and essentially benched him and said, hey, you're supposed to be out there and we pay you to do this. And, or no, you're supposed to play the game the way, he made the
what
reference.
You're paid to do. Yeah, you're paid to make that play.
You're paid to make that play because he's now a college player and he's making like NIL money. Okay. Isn't that the same thing? I mean, remember, you go back, Whitey Herzog. Remember the Gary Templeton era of Whitey Herzog? Remember that?
I do remember this. It's been probably a year since we told the story, but so people who didn't hear it a year ago refresh their memory, Brad.
Well, the interesting part of this is they traded Gary Templeton, who was, I believe, the shortstop for the Cardinals at the time, for this unknown guy. I believe he was with the Padres, wasn't he? Like this guy.
He was, yeah. He only played 1 year in the minor leagues with the Padres. He played at Walla Walla, and then he was with the Pods.
And his name was Ozzie Smith, I believe was his name. Wasn't the guy's name? Nobody's ever probably heard of him before.
Yeah, it was Osborne. It was Osborne Earl, but you could call him Ozzie.
Right, Osborne Earl Smith. Okay, they traded. Hold on, I had to sneeze. I don't know where that came from. Okay. They traded Gary Templeton because, and do you remember this? There's video of this somewhere. At one point in time, Gary wasn't putting in 100% effort. He was just sort of dogging it, okay? And he came off the field. I think it was something to the point that he made a play poorly, and the fans were upset.
He refused to leg out a ground ball.
Right, that's what it was. He essentially hit a ground ball, and he was going to be out. So he ran about 3 steps, and he stopped, and he went back toward the dugout, okay? And the fans booed him. And what did he do? He gave the finger to the fans, okay? Gary Templeton was gone. He was gone. Now, the crazy part of that is great talent. Matter of fact, he went on they traded him somewhere else, didn't they? Or they traded him San Diego, and didn't he do?
Yeah, he stayed. He had a long career at San Diego. Yeah, he had a really good career there.
Right, and he was, I believe, I don't think he was an all-star, but maybe he was. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, but I don't mean to get into the minutia, but to be an all-star, he would have to beat out Ozzie Smith, and Ozzie Smith was an all-star every year. But I believe he was a backup shortstop a couple of years in the all-star team.
Right. So the point being was, he was dogging it, and the fans said, "We don't want any part of this, dude. You're playing for the Cardinals. You're making bank. Get your butt running to first base because you don't know what's going to happen. They may overthrow first base. The first baseman may drop it. He may pull his foot off the bag. Yada 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 yada." And that is the exact opposite of Pete Rose, that's why they call him Charlie Hustle, because he would run out every single ground ball, not like at a normal pace. He would go full out every single game, every single play. That was Pete Rose, right? And that's what people want.
You're exactly right, yeah.
That's what people want when you go to the DMV, when you go to the IRS, when you go to the EPA. That's what you want. By the way, I forgot to mention this after we got off the show on Monday. I did go up to NOCO, and I did take pictures. I don't know did I send you that picture? Did I send you the picture?
You did not, no. From McDonnell Boulevard?
Yes. There, what used to be a culvert is now going to be a bridge because once again, the ground under the McDonnell is all polluted. So that's why they tore up McDonnell. But yeah, they're putting in a new bridge there. And what's interesting about it is I'll send you this picture. John and I are not in the same studio if I haven't figured that out yet. Otherwise, I'd just be able, hey, John, look at this picture. Just hold my phone up and you'd see it across the room. But that was my point is that they said that, the bridge was in bad shape. There was no bridge there. It was a big old monstrous culvert. Now, maybe the culvert was in bad shape, but they said it was a bridge. That's not what happened. And it's so frustrating. Maybe Trump will change this around to the point where when he says something, he'll say, hey, the government doesn't want you to know, but I'm going to tell you right now. You know what I mean?
I do. And I'm waiting for more drone information. He promised us to tell us the truth of what's going on with the drones.
Did you hear about that? I heard the interview where he was asked that question. And he said that it concerned him because not only were the drones flying over all sorts of places in New Jersey, they're flying over his golf course. And he was concerned about that as well, too. Now, once again, here we go. It's like Donald Trump. I don't know. Here's what's going to happen. 4 years from now, when whoever's a new president is inaugurated, because this is the 22nd of January, 4 years from this very day, January would be January what? January 22nd, 2029, and I would at that point in time be 93 years old, I guess.
Yeah, according to your kayfabe birthday, yeah.
Are we going to look back and say, oh my God, this was a meltdown, or was this the best 4 years ever? I think we're going to say it was the best 4 years ever, Brad. I think we're going to see a lot of mistakes. I think we're going to see some bungled staff positions, but that's the cost of doing business. Well, but see, once again, the entrepreneur's credo is you fail. How do you increase your successes? You increase your failures. I mean, John has pointed out all my failures all the time. He goes through them all the time about, when Brad was doing this, when Brad was doing that.
Hey, no, hold on. Now, let me defend myself, Brad. I do not point out failures. I point out successes that just happened to be left by the internet wayside. That's all. And remember, Brad, I'm calling the prayer line and leaving an apology prayer for you. You still have the apology line going on, right?
That's 5-7. I'm sorry. Yes, that's
okay. Good.
Hold on.
Good.
I think that's
I can't remember a good write-off.
I think remember the name. I think it's 557. I'm sorry. It's not a write-off, John. I mean.
Okay. I would just love to sit down with your accountant and do like a career retrospective of her top, let's say 100 write-offs, where like Brad was like, okay, I'm going to do an apology line. And she's like, oh, that's good. The IRS is going to buy that.
Well, now hold on a minute, John. But see, here's the difference between what you're saying is I don't take my clients out to fancy lunches at fancy restaurants like the Monsanto boys used to do. I don't travel around the world and stay in four-season hotels. I told you the story when I was working for the Learfield folks. I had a joint venture with the Learfield. The accountant, who did not like me, complimented me because of the fact that when I turned in my expense report, that was the year I worked for them for free. That was an interesting story. I worked for them for a whole year for free, and I said, just cover my expenses. And the accountant thought, oh, my God, he's going to be staying at Four Seasons. I was staying at the Super 8 in Des Moines, okay?
So what is a $144 hotel? What's the difference between that and you buying 12 domains at $12 that you give up on after 6 weeks?
I'm not giving up on them, John.
I didn't say you did. I'm just saying if you were, I don't mean you, Brad. If you were to do 12 domains at $12 each and write them off, it'd be the same thing as writing off a $144 dinner, right?
No, it's not, because of the fact that's T&E. T&E is only 50% deduction, and whereas business expense is 100% deduction.
Okay, well, you got me on there, Brad.
Yeah.
Anyway, the point is, I'm going to call, because I was wrong about that, I'm going to call your not a write-off. I'm going to call the I'm sorry line, and I'm going to apologize for that, Brad.
Call 25 God Squad, and I'll see what's crazy about this is this. Man, this gets me going. You know, I get so upset about this because of the fact that it bothers me when I hear people say, you don't pay your fair share. It's like, okay, if I were a billionaire, every time Biden said, you're not paying your fair share. Have you ever seen the numbers, like the top 1% of the earners in the country, the percentage of the taxes they pay?
A huge amount. Yeah. It's almost higher than a public radio station.
By the way, John, give me going on this. I go to STL NPR, okay? There are 34 reporters there. Do they do any of their own stuff?
Yes. And you know what? I'm glad you brought this up, Brad. By the way, I don't know if you could tell, but part of my goal today would be get you off track as many times as possible. And I hate to toot my own horn, but I'm doing a really good job today. I'm outperforming today. Also, at the top of St. Louis Public Radio today, I wanted to call it to your attention because their reporter, Brian Munoz, actually went to Washington, D.C. And I thought that was a nationally syndicated story, but I clicked on it. And Brian actually went there and took pictures. He interviewed some chick who is calling herself a transgender man, and that was like the Missouri connection. But what I'm guessing, Brad, is that Brian went there and in like national NPR, I'm guessing, picked up the tab on his flight and everything like that and paid him to be there. And then they syndicate because he took pictures of, folks from every state and did like a national protest. Folks are protesting Donald Trump, and he had some Trump supporters. The point is, a guy from St. Louis Public Radio did coverage in Washington, D.C. Now, even you should applaud that, Brad.
Okay, I go to the top story in stlpr.org, which is St. Louis Public Radio, and where is it from? The KFF Health News Department. Now, isn't that Kaiser firm? For who is it? Who's KFF?
Yeah, it's folks who go to my website every day, Brad, including today, will see that story. And they will see that it's the Kaiser Family Foundation.
Right.
So the Kaiser Family Foundation thinks, how can we produce progressive content and make it look like news?
Yes.
And who would possibly pick up news from a do-gooder organization and pass it off as real news?
Well, the point being is, with 34 people on the news staff at NPR, don't you think they could generate their own news without having to take news from a pseudo...
The Kaiser Family Foundation.
Yes. I mean, okay, let's go through the stories. There's number one. And once again, this is a hard-hitting story. This cracks me up. Missouri will soon get sports betting and a fund to help prevent problem gambling. The story centers around all these dudes, and it's dudes, who are driving across the river and sitting in parking lots at convenience stores in Granite City and DuPont and places like that, betting on sports. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, I never heard of that. Do you mean you can drive your car across the river and sit in a parking lot and it's going to geolocate you being in Illinois and you can bet on sports? I never knew that. I'm so glad that the KFF News Bureau and St. Louis Public Radio told me that I can drive across the river and make bets in the parking lot at Joe's convenience store in Granite City. I mean, is this like a non-news story or what? That's the number one news story.
Yeah, I mean, but by the way, and we're not exactly breaking ground here, Brad, but I mean, you illustrate the point very well, is that, and that's why I point out to you a lot of times, you'll say, hey, look at the story from St. Louis Public Radio. And it's like, nope, it's from the Missouri Independent. It's not even from St. Louis Public Radio.
Here's what I want. I want Donald Trump to take over all the NPR affiliates and go through
Yeah,
and just
why not? I mean, if we can have Elon by TikTok.
Right.
And maybe we could get Jeff Bezos' top-heavy girlfriend or wife or whoever she is to convince Zuck to do, well, anything. Then we could just have one united statist, big government social media. Wouldn't that be great?
Do we dare tell the story of Elon Musk meeting Jeff Bezos' girlfriend? Have you seen that?
I haven't seen the thing about him meeting her, but I have seen Zuck. I saw a post about Zuck seemed quite smitten with her.
Oh, yeah, with Zuckerberg. Yes.
Yeah. He's getting a little bit of flack for that. I saw that on Tony's Kansas City.
Right.
And I was like, well, maybe this is a stretch. But anyway, yeah, we're way over time. I'm sorry, Brett.